And, which says to me, you have ADD. But because depression and anxiety are so much easier to treat, particularly with non-narcotic medications, CPS has hounded me on multiple occasions about getting on antidepressants. And I was sitting here going, you can put me on antidepressants. First of all, I'm not playing button who's got the button with SSRIs and or SNRIs and shit like that. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm saying they don't work for me. Because, you know, like, you take one pill and you take it for a couple of weeks and then you go back, and then depending on what's going on, they put you on another pill or they up your dosage or whatever, and so then you have to guess what side effects you're going to have. And the ultimate goal ends up being they want you to feel nothing. And I may be ashamed of my feelings, and it's something that I'm working on. However, I like feeling my feelings. I like feeling like a human being. I think that's the one thing I'm not ashamed of. I am not ashamed of feeling like a human being. So, that is always frustrating. But going back to the point I'm trying to make with depression is, CPS, they seem to, this is my perception of the situation, they seem to want to be able to document, oh, you have a mental health condition, therefore you need medication, and therefore we can put that little piece of paper and that little note saying that we did something. And if you try and stand up for yourself and say, no, that's not going to work, you get in the situation that I'm in right now, and I really don't want to get into it, to be honest with you. But, so often people seem to think that depression is just this choice or this character flaw, or it's a one-off thing that you can just, boom, take a pill and it's gone. That's not how it works. And it's not something that happens out of nowhere. It's something that, there's something in my brain. There's something in my spirit. There's something, maybe not necessarily wrong, but there's something that functions a different way than a neurotypical brain. There's something in there that's different, and that's not necessarily wrong. However, that difference, I well and truly believe, is exacerbated, if not triggered, by other people's choices all too often. And I mean, I can hear somebody going, well, bum, 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 you shouldn't be like that. Don't shit on me, people. You know what? I get it. Life knocks you down all the time, and you've got to figure out how to get back up. But in the meantime, you're on the ground. Back in January, I got hit by a truck. It was hilarious, okay? It really was. But I make it sound like it was way worse than it is. This truck basically nudged me and I fell over. That's why it's hilarious. But I like to say I got hit by a truck. And it knocked me over. And I got back up. But I didn't get back up on my own. That driver, out of total and complete shock, jumped out of the truck and came over and helped me up. But until then, I was on the ground. This driver didn't knock me over and then get up and go, well, why aren't you standing already? Because there's a period of time when you're on the ground and sometimes you need help getting back up. And you need it from someone who's not going to sit there and go, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know? A driver didn't sit there and go, you should have been able to do this yourself. I said, no, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. Are you okay? Do you need medical attention? Are you going to be all right? And I mean, I sat there like freaking out. Like in reality, I sat there. I mean, this is a very brief exchange that happened, but I sat there like just completely freaking out because he touched me and I was like, oh, that felt so good. just that physical contact. But anyways, that's beside the point. The point is he knocked me over. And he was humble enough to go, fuck. Well, I mean, I don't know if he actually said that, but fuck, I messed up and I hurt somebody. Let me help make it right. And it's easier to do that when you physically hurt somebody. But when you emotionally hurt somebody, it's almost like it's easier to say, well, they'll fix themselves. You know? And that's kind of how I feel right now. As people in and around my life have hurt me, have knocked me over, have metaphorically hit me with trucks. Not nudged me, actually hit me. And they're just standing beside my body sprawled on the pavement, wondering why I'm not getting back up. I know, toodaloo. You know? I think my favorite metaphor for this whole situation that I'm dealing with is I feel like I'm being punched in the face and then reprimanded for bleeding. And so I think, going back to that Iron Druid quote, depression is a prison to which you hold the key, except you never think to look for it. Yeah, ultimately, I've got to make the changes. I've got to do what I've got to do. Ultimately, it's me that has to use that key. But sometimes you need other people to point it out to you. And to make sure that you see and understand where it is. If that makes sense. I guess it was about 2-3 weeks ago, the new season of 13 Reasons Why came out on Netflix. And so I'd been thinking a lot about that show, the first season and the second season as well. But if you don't know, it's a show. The first season, well, it's a show about a girl who commits suicide, and she leaves behind recordings for some of her classmates detailing how their actions contributed to her decision. And, you know, it comes off as sort of a suicide revenge fantasy. Actually, it kind of is, but I think more than anything, the overarching message is that we are each other's keepers. You know, I mean, there's a certain amount of individual accountability that we have to take. Do not get me wrong. But how many times, if you've ever known somebody who committed suicide, how many times do we ask ourselves, Was there something that I could have done that might have changed their mind? And ultimately, we always go, oh, no, 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 they had already made up their mind. And, and that assuages our guilt and kind of gets some of these guilt ferrets off of our shoulders. Call back to last week's show. But the truth is there's always something we could have done. I mean, we can't change it now, but maybe we can change it in the future. I have so many thoughts going through my head right now. It's insane. Back in March, I did a show where I talked a little bit about learned helplessness. And I talked about this experiment that was done in the 1960s with dogs. And what it was there was this, paddock area. And there's a, wall separating the two halves of the paddock. And one half, had little, electric shock panels or whatever. And so you had two groups of dogs. So one group of dogs, they put them on the side with the electric panels. The panels would shocky their feet, and they'd jump over the wall and get away from the shocks. The second group of dogs, same thing, except they were restrained, and they had to stay there until the shocks subsided. They were not allowed to get away from the shocks. So eventually, the dogs who were restrained were no longer restrained. They were let go. But the panels would shock their feet, and they'd just stay there. They'd just stay there, and they would take it because they had learned that they couldn't get away from it and that they had to endure the pain. That's learned helplessness. They learned that they were helpless. But here's the hopeful thing that came out of that. The researchers then learned that if they physically moved the dogs and showed them how to jump away and get away from the shock, to get away from the pain, eventually the dogs went back to getting away from the shocks. I always forget who actually did that experiment, so I can never remember the names and stuff associated with it. But depression is the prison to which you hold the key. Ultimately, those dogs had to be the ones to jump. Except you never think to look for the key. But somehow, maybe you need somebody to help you look. And this show's running a little longer than I intended or expected it to. But I was thinking earlier about that, where I am right now. I don't have much of a support system. I have some really wonderful coworkers who are some of the greatest cheerleaders a girl could ask for. They feed me. They tell me I'm pretty. They give me hugs. Corey sings my name. I love my coworkers, and they're wonderful, but I know their resources for helping me are very limited. And I don't begrudge them that. I have a couple of friends that are wonderful and loyal and have been just awesome for years. But again, their resources are limited as to how they can help me. So I don't feel like I have the support system that I should have. But I got to thinking, maybe I need to stop expecting a support system of a human persuasion. Maybe start